So good morning and happy May Day, especially our comrades. Uh, so I'm going to give a talk today that is based on a talk by Shunryu Suzuki in Zen Mind Beginner's Mind, and the name of the talk is Believing in Nothing. So I thought I'd paraphrase what he says and give my understanding, and maybe people can share their understandings, and maybe we can figure this stuff out. For those who don't know, Shunryu Suzuki was a Soto Zen priest who came to America from Japan. He was in San Francisco, and a lot of Americans first learned about Zen from him, including Tim Burkett, our former guiding teacher. And we are in the Soto Zen school. So he's a core teacher in our school. And I think he's great because he takes Dogen, who is difficult for modern Americans to understand, and kind of translates Dogen, in a sense, into modern American ideas in English. So his book is a collection of talks he gave in the 1960s. It was published in 1970. So the talk begins, I discovered that it is absolutely necessary to believe in nothing. That is, we have to believe in something that has no form and no color, something that exists before all forms and colors appear. This is a very important point. So Suzuki Roshi says this is a very important point. It's absolutely necessary to believe in this. So what is he talking about? First he says believe in nothing, but then he says that means we have to believe in something which has no form and color. It exists before all things appear. So I think believing in nothing has two related meanings. And one is to not be attached to fixed ideas about reality. And Suzuki talks about this in his talk, and I'm just paraphrasing him. So he says, if you believe in fixed ideas about reality, you get attached to your ideas. Then it becomes a self-centered idea, and then you lose your composure. And we can see this in our lives when people get attached to ideas, like they think they figured it out, then they have big problems. And we see it in religion or politics. If you become attached to this idea as being true, then now you have something to defend. Now you have an ideal that you have to conform to. It becomes part of your identity. You're kind of stuck. And then now you have something to argue about. So this is also a core teaching in Mahayana Buddhism and Zen Buddhism about absolute reality can't be captured in an idea. Any fixed idea about reality is going to be somewhat off the mark because reality is just this. And what our mind does necessarily is break up this into things, which is necessary for us to live. And it's the mind that breaks things up into things is obviously true in a sense. There are separate things. I'm me, I'm not you guys, but it's also a little off the mark. It's somewhat of a human construct, and I think this is what Suzuki is talking about in his second part of his koan. And I also noticed yesterday morning that this is not just Mahayana, but also in original Buddhism, in the Metta Sutta, we chant, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. So I think it's in original Buddhism too, not being attached to fixed views. So believing in nothing as an expression of not being attached to our fixed views, to me is kind of easy to understand. I think it's an important spirit we have in democracy and in America. I was reading a biography of Ben Franklin when they were drafting the Constitution. He was an old man by this point, and they needed to compromise. Some of the compromises were bad, unfortunately. But he was expressing this idea that so often in my life I thought I was right, and it turned out I was wrong. So we don't know. So let's not be so attached to our ideas. He didn't use that terminology, but that's what he was saying. So that's the first meaning of believing in nothing, not being attached to our fixed ideas of our reality. But then Suzuki goes on to say, we must believe in nothing. That is, we have to believe in something that has no form and no color, something that exists before all forms and colors appear. So he's also talking about having a belief. And then he goes on to explain this. If you are always prepared for accepting everything we see as coming from nothing, knowing that there's some reason why phenomenal existence of such and such form appears, then you will have perfect composure. So it's absolutely necessary to believe in nothing, but I don't mean voidness. There is something that is always prepared for taking some particular form, and it has some rules or theory or truth in its activity. It is one existence that has no form or color, and it is always ready to take form or color. This is not just Buddhist teaching or theory, it's a necessary understanding of our life. So what is this? What does it mean to believe in something that has no form and color? It's no particular fixed thing, but it manifests in each moment as particular shapes and forms. And we really can't grasp this as a thing, right? You can't grasp it as an object of mind, as a thing, something with no form or color, something without any shape or appearance can't be grasped as a fixed thing. And that's, I think, why he says, believe in nothing. So it's a paradox, but it's true. And somewhere I read Suzuki was quoted as saying, if it's not a paradox, it's not true. And we can talk about that later, but I agree with him for what it's worth. So he explains what he means by this, what it means to believe in something without form or color, but always is here and ready to appear as objects and things. He gives an example. He says, say it's raining in the morning, like you're sitting zazen and you hear the morning rain. And we don't know what's going to happen later in the day. Maybe it'll be beautiful. Maybe we'll be stuck in a muddy traffic jam. We just don't know. If our mind is self-centered, we'll be listening to the rain and we'll be worried, we'll be unhappy, we'll be annoyed, not knowing that it may be really beautiful later. And then I think this is his key point. But if we accept ourselves as the embodiment of the truth, we will have no worry. We'll think, it's raining now, but we don't know what will happen in the next moment. Maybe it'll be beautiful later. Maybe it'll be stormy. Because we don't know, let's appreciate the sound of the rain. This is the right attitude. If you understand yourself as a temporal embodiment of the truth, you will have no difficulty. You will appreciate your surroundings and your life as a wonderful part of Buddha's great activity, even in the midst of difficulties. This is our way of life. So he says, if you understand yourself as a temporal embodiment of the truth, you will have no difficulty. Does that help? I think it does. So I think what he's saying is, We should understand that everything we meet is our life. Everything we encounter is our life. And there's really no separation between the self and our experience. So ordinarily, we experience our lives as being separate from ourselves. So there's me, and then there's my life, which are the things that happen to me, the people I meet. And as long as there's this gap between me, what I conceive of as me, and my life, the things, the experiences, the activities, then there's problems. Then we have self-centered thinking. Because then I'm not just experiencing everything as me, as my life, I'm experiencing life as a problem to be solved. And I'm necessarily going to be lacking composure and worried about what's going to happen next. Is it going to be a muddy traffic jam in the afternoon? So I think what he's saying is to understand the self as being not something different from nothing, which is something that appears in this moment as various things, and appreciate your life that way. And we don't really see how our mind creates a separate self from the experience. It's so subtle and automatic. It's part of the nature of our consciousness that it's not apparent to us. And so we need teachers and teachings like Suzuki and Zen Buddhism to help us see this for ourselves. Not believe it, but to see it, to experience it in here. And once you see this, and once you feel this and get this in here, you can live your life a different way, a less self-centered way, and your problems aren't such big problems. And I think this is what we do in when we sit in meditation, when we do zazen, right? We're not choosing, we're just experiencing what's going on right now, and there's no separation between my experience of this moment and me. This is very hard stuff to talk about. We spend a lot of time using words to talk about what can't be captured in the words. Like, we're always talking about the ineffable. Not just we Zen Buddhists, but I think all religions. But what can we do, right? We're humans. We use words and ideas. But I hope you can see what I'm pointing to, despite my attempts to capture it in words. So I think what Suzuki is saying is to accept everything that appears as your life, as you, and see everything that you encounter as the self. And then you can love your whole life, not just the good parts, but even the bad parts, right? The whole potato, the whole catastrophe. This is a part of my life when I'm stuck in a traffic jam, no problem. This is the part of my life when I'm embarrassed in front of hundreds of people, like giving a Dharma talk. No problem. So in another talk that Suzuki gives, he talks about this. He quotes Tozan, which is the Japanese form of Chinese name, which I can't pronounce, but Tozan was the founder of Chinese Soto Zen. So it's an early Chinese Zen school that Dogen brought with him to Japan, and Suzuki brought with him to America. And so this is from another book of Suzuki's talks, Not Always So. And Tim is going to be leading a morning study group on this book. And Tim was probably at some of these talks. So he quotes Tozan Suzuki quotes Tozan in this book as saying, wherever I go, I meet myself. Right? It's a really nice saying, wherever I go, I meet myself. It doesn't mean wherever I go, I bring all my baggage with me, which is also true, but wherever I go, I meet myself. So I tried to find this quote, not that I don't believe Suzuki, but I wanted to find the source of this quote, and I think I found it in Tozan's Enlightenment poem. There's a book that has Tozan's Enlightenment poem. It was in Chinese, and it was translated by Suzuki. So I'm pretty sure this is where he got it from. So this is Tozan's Enlightenment poem. The title is No Beginning, No End. Do not try to see the objective world. You, which is given as an object to see, is quite different from yourself. I am going my own way, and I meet myself, which includes everything I meet. I am not something I can see as an object. When you understand self, which includes everything, you have your true way. So I'll just read it one more time. Do not try to see the objective world. You, which is given as an object to see, is quite different from yourself. I am going my own way, and I meet myself, which includes everything I meet. I am not something I can see as an object. When you understand self, which includes everything, you have your true way. So I think that's the source of Tozan's famous saying, wherever I go, I meet myself. And then finally, at the end of Suzuki's talk on believing in nothing, from Zen Mind Beginner's Mind, he wraps it up by saying this. Using Buddhist terminology, we should begin with enlightenment and then proceed to practice and then to think. Because most thinking is self-centered, why do I have so many problems? And he goes on to talk about Zen students who come to him with their problems. Well, everyone has always problems. And so he's saying, like, if you start with your thinking mind is self-centered, and now you're focused on all these problems. So he says, instead, start with enlightenment, then practice, then your thinking, and then your thinking won't be self-centered. And then he says, by enlightenment, I mean believing in nothing, believing in something that has no form or color, that is ready to take form or color. So thank you. That's my talk. And I'm happy to hear other people's takes on Suzuki's teaching.
So and this is something that hasn't just come up in your talk, Wayne, but a flock of birds and a flock of fighter planes. If I enter into the flock of birds, that's non-problematic in a lot of different ways than if I enter into the flock of fighter planes. And so part of encountering the flock of fighter planes is to enter into the problematicity of the fighter planes. And so it seems like a traditional Zen approach of dividing that flock of fighter planes into microseconds and only countering it into microseconds instead of tracing it all the way back and all the way forward, including when it takes out the steel factory or whatever it takes out, is somewhat not, A, it's not compassionate, B, it's missing some important reality of the fighter planes. it seems to me Zen spends a lot of time trying to avoid coming to terms with that.
Well, I don't think he's talking about not distinguishing between fighter planes and birds or approaching them the same way. He's talking about us, about me, about my life. So I think he's talking about in the morning, not fantasizing about what's going to happen later in the day, or so to use your analogy, if you're in a flock with a flock of birds, you're in a flock of birds, and you do what needs to be done. And if you're in a flock of fighter planes, you do what needs to be done there. That's your whole life right then and there. You have to take appropriate action. So he's not really talking about what to do or what not to do. He's offering a way of living, of experiencing our lives fully that's not so wrapped up in our thoughts. And I think if you have to think about this is a flock of fighter, probably flock isn't the proper. This is a squadron of fighter planes. If you have to think about all this stuff, you may not be able to respond so appropriately. You have to act, appropriate in the moment. So I think I see what you're saying and I agree with you. I just don't know that it's a response to Suzuki saying that this is a helpful way of relating to your life.
Well, going into the fire, right, into the fire is different than not seeing the fire. So in some ways you have to go into the problem as the problem and come out the other side, as opposed to chopping it up into microseconds and saying no problem.
Yes. Yeah. You're not separate from the problem. The problem is your life when you're in the middle of the problem.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Forgive me for calling you out, but I think your t-shirt's appropriate for today. Get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble.
Thank you.
Reminds me of just times in my life where I've tried to escape my life and that I'm still there despite my best efforts. And I think about how important the practice is in remembering that it's all one, right? And wherever you are, that's where you are.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Steve Hagen talked about our problem is we don't want to have any problems.
Right.
And I think it's a talk about the Buddha, who supposedly someone came to him and said, I hear you're like this wise teacher, I have so many problems, what can you do to help me? And he says, nothing. I can't help you with your multitude of problems. I can only help you with one problem, which is you don't want to have any problems. Sure.
What struck me in your talk was when you were talking about that you used the word apparent in this story you were telling, and I thought that is the quintessential word, because as a parent, as children, it was what really opened my eyes to having to be fully present in a moment and to watch them go outside. It starts to pour. My mind already goes to, they're going to be tracking mud into their house, they're going to catch, whatever. And all I had to do was open my eyes and see their joy and their stomping and their being this fully present being in the moment, so that I could let go all that stuff going on in my mind that was taken far, far away, just be here now. And so I think, as a parent, children are my greatest teachers.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Yeah, that is, one of the nice things about children is they help you see things with fresh eyes. Because, we have all this information about things, but so we don't see them for the first time. Yeah. Yeah, so to them, rain, whoa, rain. Rain.
Good morning.
Morning.
So, a while back, we had an online social Friday discussion about how to talk about Zen with people who are not Buddhists, or outside of our midst. Your first sentence, your first quote, really, made me think about that. This was actually quite a while ago that we had the discussion, but so often in our society, with most of our spiritual or our established religions, we have to believe in something. So to me, this is a really important thing to have in your head. If you encounter people that are like, well, are you Christian? Are you Jewish? Yeah, it comes up from time to time. And rather than try to evade the question, which I think sometimes we have a tendency to do, I think it's really helpful to think about, well, how do I explain this concept that I believe in nothing? And you just gave an entire talk on that, but I would want to encourage others in here to maybe think about that. When you encounter that question with other people, well, maybe how did Wayne explain this? How might I explain this?
Yeah, I encountered that too, and I gave up. I don't think it doesn't really help to try to explain this practice to people that aren't really interested in it. So what I do is I would say it's not like about having beliefs, it's a practice. It's a practice, and maybe I'll talk about we meditate. And that's it, and if they're interested, they can ask more things. But when I first encountered Zen, I was so excited about it. And I tried to explain to my friends these great teachings about no self and non-duality, and it doesn't go over well. But it's not our problem. It's not our problem, right? We don't have to talk about our practice. We just live it. And it's you walk the walk, and then people can see if it might be helpful for them or not. But if you want to explain in words, I would be very proud of you, Tanya. You're very courageous, especially if you talk about it at work.
A while back, I was listening to a podcast by a physicist who was talking about how phenomena arise from nothing, and about how always all over the universe, in places that are completely empty, pops little reality, physical things or particles of energy, whatever, pop out of that. Is that emptiness is intrinsically unstable, and that reality pops out of that, and every once in a while those things evolve into a universe. This was obviously a theory, but it just but that things come out of nothingness, and that the point of what Suzuki was saying here, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the way I'm interpreting it is that nothingness is what he was suggesting that we believe in, that everything that is comes out of nothingness.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. So I think there's the scientific approach to explaining things, which is different from the Buddhist approach of, Buddha lived before science existed. But what's beautiful to me is that the scientific worldview and the Buddhist worldview are consistent. So they're coming at it different ways, but there's nothing that the Buddha taught that is inconsistent with scientific reality, which is not something that you can say about a lot of religions. I shouldn't say that. I take that back. I moved to strike that from the record. But it's one nice thing about Buddhism is, and I think the Dalai Lama has been quoted as saying, if there's a Buddhist teaching that's inconsistent with science, then science trumps Buddhism. We're practicing the practice of reality.
Mhm.
Science is changing all the time anyway.
Right. There's the pessimistic view of science. I forgot the correct term of it, but it's the idea that scientific theories are always being improved, right? And so I think one way where Buddhism and science differ in their approach is that with science, we think if we keep going, we're going to figure it all out, not realizing that all we're doing is coming up with more definitions, and we're not turning the light inward and saying it's our consciousness that is breaking things up. So we're never going to get to the end, right? We're going to find smaller and smaller particles and forces. What do I know? But that's just my take on things. Yeah, so I think it's beautiful that physics and Buddhism are not inconsistent. I also think that physics helps me in understanding Buddhism in that, in physics there's the quantum mechanics model of subatomic particles, which is one way of viewing reality, and then there's like Einstein physics of gravity and large objects, and they're inconsistent, but they're both describing the same reality. So it's not like it's not like quantum physics and gravity as being different realities. They're two ways of looking at the same thing. And I think that's what Buddhism is also pointing to, non-duality, emptiness, yes, but also we're all completely separate, and this is emptiness and non-duality showing up as all of us being separate beings in this mundane world, not two separate things. And that's what makes us also precious. Anyone else?
Thank you for, go ahead. Katie. Katie's
Katie.
Thank you for your talk, Wayne. We've talked about the differences with Buddhism and science and other religions, but I'm a big fan of all religions, and there's a commonality I've heard, and I thought of, if you're a Christian and belief was really stressed, and we have a different view of belief, but one thing I think all religions have in common, including ours, is we can call it faith, trust, confidence. This trust that, we have trust in the practice and the teachings. And I think that's true of every religion. So I don't talk about what I do much with people outside of Buddhism, because that never goes well. But I think that is one thing we all have in common. Even if you don't attend a church or a religion, you can have faith or trust or confidence. And it does make sense in life. And that's a great foundation.
Yes, I agree. Thanks, Matt. Katie?
So my question is, where do values come in? Because, we have certain convictions and values that we feel like this is right and not doing this is wrong. But the more we, insist on those things, the more we separate from each other. But at the same time, we need to have some kind of foundation, right? So how do you balance that?
For me, I have my values and I'm going to act on them, but I'm not 100% certain I'm right. I might be wrong. And that kind of takes some of the heat, some of the anger out of it. take some of the pain out of it. I find myself arguing in my head a lot with a certain political party in this country. It's not really helpful to anyone. And so I have my values, I'm gonna act according to my values, but it's gonna be, I'm not gonna be so sure of myself to the extent that I'm going to hate. Well, actually, I'm going to hate, and then I'm gonna see that, and I'm gonna try to let it go in return. So for me, it's a constant practice of, yes, believing in your values, living your values, knowing right from wrong, knowing harmful from unharmful, and at the same time not being so, caught in that it causes me to behave badly, to break the precepts, not engage in right speech, blah, blah, blah. Shouldn't say blah, blah, blah. Ellipsis.
Can I address Katie's way? There's one way that I've done to help with values without any religion, is you can take any action that you may or may not take and say, if everybody in the world did this action, would the world be a better or worse place? If it's a better place, then that's a good action to do. If it's a worse place, then that's a bad thing to do. And then that's a way to build up values from nothing. And and you can't make everybody in the world do something. But I can do my part and do what I think is better. And then maybe other people will follow along, and maybe not. But at least my conscience, which is really the whole point, is I feel better doing what's better.
Can I dive off there? I just wanted to add to that, my perception of democracy. Everybody has a vote, and then I'm just going to live with this party for 4 years and not revolt. Is I like to think of vegans and then my dog. And my dog's going to eat meat, and all the animals in the Serengeti are going to eat meat and they enjoy violence, to get their food. Whereas the cows like peaceful, the birds like peaceful life. Some birds don't. And just keep boundaries stable and allow people to have different values.
Yeah, and I wonder about something. I don't want to discuss it. I'll just throw it out there, it's why would a benevolent creator of reality create a reality where some forms of life eat other forms of life and cause that kind of suffering? This is a rhetorical question. Anyway, just do that. It bothered Charles Darwin too. Thank you. Yeah, dogs. My dog killed an adolescent squirrel. I love my dog, and she's a killer. It's not her fault. And how do we have those opposing views? My sweet, beautiful dog, killer. It was very distressing. Anyone else?
When I first started coming to the Zen Center, I kind of felt like the Zen Center was kind of like gaslighting me. Being like, don't hold on to your views too tight, and it felt kind of funny. As I work in manufacturing, and it was kind of like we're trying to solve these problems and we come up with these theories that were so true to what was going on, and then we go to prove them out, and then they would just bring up more questions. It wasn't right, and then we'd come up with another like 5 to 10 reasons why this new theory was true, and it felt like it was so right, and then it wasn't. And then you just repeat that over and over again until you go to try to prove out what was going on. So it was kind of funny when when I first got that teaching, it seemed strange, but then it really got put into practice quick once I started my job and made things go a little easier, because you definitely get caught on those theories and it turns into finger pointing.
Yeah.
It's not good, but another thing too was, one thing I liked about kind of going back to the morals is that even within Buddhism, there's kind of some odd rules and precepts going back to like the monks and the nuns. Some of it was pretty sexist and strange stuff, and it's kind of like it allows, where Buddhism is gone, is it allows us to bring those questions back, and it's not like we have to take those fixed ideas that those guys had back then and try to apply it to our lives these days, but rather I was like kind of the same concept going to manifest in a beneficial way, and it kind of rings true without anything being forced upon you. It feels good.
It does feel good, yeah. And, there's this strain in Buddhism of emphasis on being a lamp unto yourself, and, Buddha taught that. Don't believe what I say because I'm the Buddha, just listen to me, test it out for yourself. And because Buddha was a person, we don't have to believe what Buddha said as true. If Buddha were our creator, omniscient creator, it would be problematic, to say that maybe it was mistaken. Yeah, I'm glad you find this helpful. And you can see, like at work, some people are so convinced that their ideas are right, and people argue, and it's nice to be able to like, well, I think this is right, but I don't know. Try it. Yeah, let's try it your way. Take the ego out of it.
Wayne,
Yes.
this is Margaret Pfeffer. I've always thought of Buddhist practice as being, for me, a practice of activity and process. And so, to be attached, even any of the concepts that come to us through our Dharma teachings, without, seeing how they impact my life, seeing a kind of give and take between those teachings is probably a really misdirected way to live my life. So it's, and I know I have this concept of existence as being both discriminative and a concept of oneness, and it's a give and take between those things all the time. As a human being, I can only experience life in a discriminative way because I have, these five senses and this conscious mind and all of that baggage, if you will. And so, but I know that's not the totality of reality, far extends beyond, what I'm seeing with my eyes and what I'm, processing in my own mind. So that being a Buddhist means always going back to the precepts, the Eightfold Path, and thinking, how is this particular expression right now, what does it mean at this moment that I happen to find myself in, knowing fully well that it's going to change. And so I don't want to get too attached to any of that. And, especially Americans, I think we have a really hard time with that. It's like, we really like to get down to business and solve the problem. And so, it's challenging. It's a daily challenge to just be part of this process and to let go of so many things.
Yeah.
It helps to get older.
Yeah, getting older does help.
Let's hear it for the old people here.
Thank you, Margaret. I agree with it. I remember our old guiding teacher for a while was Shohaku Okimura, who said as he got older, he did less and less stupid things that he did when he was younger.
I don't know about that.
It's not because he got wiser, he just had less energy.
I think the secret of getting older is you're willing to just say, oh yeah, I goofed up. I made a mistake, and it's not a big deal because it's going to change anyway. So.
And I think the point that you made of Buddhism being a practice more than believing really is helpful because we don't have to argue with people. Like if my take on this doesn't resonate with you, maybe it's not right for you, it's right for me.
Or it's where you're at in the practice and you should be there. You should stay there and work with
Yeah.
that.
Exactly.
Well, and the other point I wanted to make is, in terms of values for me, I'd always go back to the heart of compassion. I guess that's what I learned from the Dalai Lama is, the most fundamental of Buddhist practices is to hold things in your heart and to see things. I'm learning this from Larry Young's book in Practice Period, is to start seeing things with heart, mind, and not just my frontal cortex. So to bring your heart into it is extremely important.
Yes, and important to bring that to ourselves.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Anyone else have anything they want to share? Going once?
So I read a book called Deviate on neuroscience and how the brain works. And it said, every information is meaningless and our brains are meaning-making machines. And so that kind of goes at any moment, anything you see, we have to put a meaning to it for our existence to keep going, to protect ourselves and to procreate. But outside of what meaning we put to it, everything else is different meanings it puts to it.
Yes. Neuroscience, evolutionary psychology is very interesting and very informative about Buddhism. There's also the scientific theory that our minds evolve not to see reality as it is, but just to help us survive, perceiving things the way they are in a way that helps us survive doesn't mean perceiving these things accurately. That adaptation trumps accuracy. So, anyway, we can talk about this afterwards, and anyone wants to talk to me about this. So, as I continue to talk about this scientist has this theory that all there is this subjective first-person experience of the world, in a sense, and there isn't any objective reality apart from our experiences of this, and there doesn't need to be anything out there apart from our experience of this. But that's just a scientist, not a Buddhist. So if you believe in science, maybe there's a science. Anyone else? Okay, I'll turn over to Raymond.